In 2021, JPMorgan Chase, the largest bank in America, with $3 trillion in assets and an army of analysts, lawyers, and risk managers, handed $175 million to a 28-year-old woman for a company that helps students fill out financial aid forms. The deal was supposed to give JPMorgan access to over 4 million young customers, future credit card holders, future mortgage applicants, a pipeline to the next generation. There was just one problem. Those 4 million customers, they didn't exist. And the woman who sold them, she knew it the entire time. Charlie Javice grew up in Westchester County, New York, one of the wealthiest areas in America. She attended a private French-American school before heading to the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business, one of the most prestigious business programs in the world. And unlike many students who graduate and go work for someone else, Javice had bigger plans. In 2017, at just 24 years old, she founded a company called Frank. The pitch was simple: free applications for federal student aid. The FAFSA is a nightmare. It's confusing, time-consuming, and intimidating. Frank would make it easy. Think TurboTax, but for financial aid. The story was perfect. A young female founder tackling student debt. A mission-driven company actually helping people. The media ate it up. She appeared on CNBC, she gave TED-style talks. In 2019, Forbes put her on their famous 30 Under 30 list, the annual celebration of young business talent that had previously featured names like Evan Spiegel and Kylie Jenner. Charlie Javice wasn't just building a company, she was building a brand, and the brand was her. The timing couldn't have been better. This was peak startup mania. Investors were throwing money at anything with a founder who could tell a compelling story. The rhinos had already collapsed, but the lessons hadn't quite sunk in yet. Frank raised money from respected venture capitalists. The company claimed to be helping millions of students access billions in financial aid. And then, in 2021, Jamie Dimon came calling. Jamie Dimon is the CEO of JPMorgan Chase. He's been called the most powerful banker in America. His bank had survived the 2008 financial crisis better than almost anyone else. JP Morgan doesn't make dumb deals, or so everyone thought. In 2020 and 2021, JP Morgan was on a shopping spree. Big tech and fintech companies were threatening to steal young customers away from traditional banks. The solution? Buy the startups before they become competitors. When Javice approached JP Morgan in the summer of 2021, she had exactly what they wanted: access to 4.25 million college-age customers, young people who would need checking accounts, credit cards, car loans, mortgages, customers for life. In September 2021, JP Morgan announced they were acquiring Frank for $175 million. Javice personally walked away with $21 million for her equity stake. Plus, she was promised another $20 million as a retention bonus. She was hired as a managing director at JP Morgan, overseeing student-focused products. At 28 years old, Charlie Javice had made it. Except she hadn't, because those 4.25 million customers that JP Morgan had just paid $175 million for, Frank had about 300,000. Here's where it gets wild. During the acquisition process, JP Morgan's team wanted to verify Frank's customer numbers. That's standard due diligence. You're about to spend $175 million. You want to make sure you're getting what you pay for. Javice had a problem. Frank didn't have 4.25 million users, not even close, and JP Morgan was asking for proof. So she went to Frank's director of engineering. According to court documents, she asked him to create what's called synthetic data. Basically, to fabricate a customer list that would show 4.25 million users when the real number was a fraction of that. The engineer's response? He refused. And here's where Javice said something that would come back to haunt her. According to testimony, she tried to reassure him by saying, "We don't want to end up in orange jumpsuits." She actually said that, out loud, to an employee she was asking to commit fraud. The engineer still refused, so Javice found someone who wouldn't. She hired an outside data science professor and paid him $18,000 to create a fake customer list. 4 million names, 4 million email addresses, 4 million birthdays, all fabricated. But she wasn't done. To make the fake data look more real, Javice and her chief growth officer went out and purchased a real list of 4.5 million college students from a data broker for $105,000. The plan was to use this purchase data to cover their tracks after the deal closed. Think about what's happening here. She's not just lying in a meeting, she's building an entire infrastructure of fraud, fake data, purchase data, a third-party verification process designated to fool one of the most sophisticated banks in the world. And it worked. JPMorgan's third-party vendor confirmed the data had 4.25 million rows. JPMorgan signed the deal. $175 million changed hands. Charlie Javice had just pulled off one of the most audacious corporate frauds in recent memory. The only question was, how long until someone noticed? The answer? Not long. After the acquisition closed, JPMorgan did what any company would do with a list of 4 million potential customers. They sent marketing emails. They sent a test campaign to about 400,000 of Frank's supposed customers. 70% bounced. That's not a typo. 7 out of 10 emails came back as undeliverable. The addresses didn't exist. The people didn't exist. For context, JPMorgan's normal email delivery rate is around 99%. This wasn't a glitch. This was a catastrophe. JPMorgan immediately launched an internal investigation. They pulled emails. They pulled text messages. They reviewed every piece of communication from the acquisition process. What they found was damning. The conversations about synthetic data, the orange jumpsuit comment, the payment to the data science professor, the purchase customer list. In September 2022, Gervais was suspended. By November, she was fired for cause. In January 2023, JPMorgan shut down Frank's website entirely and wrote off the entire $175 million investment. Then, they called the FBI. In April 2023, Charlie Gervais was arrested at her home in New Jersey. She was charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy. The trial began in February 2025. It lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution's case was brutal. They had emails, they had the text messages, they had the engineer who refused to commit fraud testifying against her. In closing arguments, the prosecutor put it simply: they acquired a crime scene. On March 28, 2025, the jury came back, guilty on all 4 counts. Charlie Gervais faced up to 30 years in prison on each charge. In September 2025, she stood behind Judge Alvin Hellerstein for sentencing. She cried as she addressed the court, saying she felt profound remorse and would spend her entire life regretting these errors. The judge wasn't moved. He called her crime biblical. Then he sentenced her to 85 months in federal prison, just over 7 years. But here's where the story gets even stranger. She was ordered to pay $287.5 million in restitution. That includes the $175 million purchase price, plus, wait for it, the more than $100 million JPMorgan had been forced to spend on her legal defense. See, when JPMorgan bought Frank, Gervais became a JPMorgan employee. Under Delaware law and Frank's bylaws, the company had to cover her legal fees. So while JPMorgan was prosecuting a case against her, they were also paying for her defense. Her lawyers reportedly billed for luxury hotel upgrades and even something called cellulite butter. I wish I was making that up. Oh, in between her conviction and sentencing, Gervais became a Pilates instructor in Miami. Her lawyers actually argued she shouldn't have to wear an ankle monitor because it would interfere with her ability to teach classes. The judge said no. Charlie Gervais isn't an isolated case. She's part of a pattern. Elizabeth Holmes, Sam Bankman-Fried, Adam Newman, a generation of founders who learned that the story matters more than the substance. That if you raise the money, you can figure out the product later. The fake it till you make it isn't just advice, it's a business model. Forbes actually created a Hall of Shame for their 30 under 30 list. Gervais made it, alongside Holmes and Bankman-Fried. But there's always another side to this story, and the judge himself pointed it out. JPMorgan Chase is the most powerful bank in America. They have thousands of employees whose entire job is to evaluate risk. And they handed $175 million to a 28-year-old based on data they apparently never properly verified. How does this happen? How does the world's most sophisticated bank get fooled by an Excel spreadsheet? Maybe the answer is simpler than we think. JPMorgan wanted Frank to be real. They wanted access to 4 million young customers. They wanted the deal to make sense. And when you want something badly enough, you stop asking hard questions. Charlie Gervais is going to prison. She'll likely serve around 5 years with good behavior. She texted someone after Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced to 11 years that she thought it was ridiculous. Now she's getting 7. The engineer who refused to create fake data? He's probably sleeping just fine. If you made it this far, you're clearly someone who appreciates a good corporate disaster story. This is the Dark Capital, where we dig into frauds, scandals, and questionable decisions that the business world would rather you forget. Hit subscribe if you want more. We've got plenty of stories to tell.